Everywhere we turn, there are GLP-1s bombarding us. Whether we know someone that's on these products, we're passing a supplement store or a weight loss clinic that's promoting them, or every other commercial that we see on TV. We're seeing these products, and maybe you're on them, you've been on them, or you're thinking about being on them. So if that's the case, this is definitely for you. Today we are going to dive into the good and the ugly about GLP-1s so you can make an informed decision either way. We're all about transparency and clarity, so hopefully this answers a lot of your questions. If you have any other questions, drop them in the comments and we can be sure to do a follow-up. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Courtney Soma. I am a board-certified health and wellness coach, holistic nutritionist, certified personal trainer, as well as weight loss specialist. So I'm super excited to bring this message to you here today, and let's dive into it. So let's start with the positives of GLP-1s. We know that they promote weight loss, and you can lose weight really fast. They're incredibly effective at managing blood glucose, and we're also saying that they can be helpful in the addiction space as well as with heart disease, which is currently America's #1 killer. So that is super promising, but there's a lot beneath the surface that are behind these benefits, and it's really important to know if you're considering these because sometimes the negatives do not outweigh the positives, and it really needs to be taken on a case-by-case basis. So what do these drugs actually do? The semaglutide and tirzepatide that are commonly used in the name brand drugs are actually peptides, and these peptides are created by the human body naturally, but these peptides for prescriptions are designed to mimic the hormone that we naturally produce. Things that this hormone is responsible for is gastric emptying, which is moving food from the stomach into the intestines and moving things along, regulating blood sugar, and also telling our brain when we're actually full. So absolutely imperative, right? If we don't know when we're actually full, we're just going to continue eating. So in the long and the short of it, those are the basics as to how it works. And even though we know that these have some very positive health benefits, there are some limitations. But in the terms of weight loss, which is really common, especially amongst women, and especially with commercial advertising these days, the focus really is weight loss because it is a huge moneymaker and it is highly effective, but we're gonna talk about it a little bit. But first I wanna ask you, if you were to drop 10, 15% of your body weight, maybe even 20, but you were gonna gain it all back within 6 months, 12 months of ceasing to take a drug, would that be worth it to you? See, a lot of women that I work with are focused on sustainability. They're tired of yo-yo dieting and being on and off the wagon and losing weight for a little bit only to regain it and really feel at the end of the day like they have failed. I want to be clear about something. If you are looking at a GLP-1 for weight loss, it will probably work, but it only works short term. What a lot of women aren't told is that this is a lifelong medication if you want sustainability. All the studies have shown is that within 6 to 12 months, 2/3 to 100% of the weight is completely gained back. But what women also may not realize is that when you lose weight that quickly, it's not only fat mass that you're losing. And this is a huge sticking point for me because it's really imperative that we know this, especially in a world where protein is also a huge focus. And we're focused on muscle mass, not only for physique, but for longevity. But we're also taking these drugs, and these drugs are being promoted when they actually promote muscle loss. And it's not just a small amount. When we lose weight through caloric restriction and exercise, we might lose 10 to 20% of that weight in muscle loss. The healthier and kind of the lower and the slower that you do it, the less muscle mass is typically lost. But when we lose this weight quickly, up to 40 to 50% of it is actually lean mass. And that's not just muscle, that's bone, other forms of connective tissue, but it is healthy weight. It's the weight that we want to have around. So it's not just fat that we're losing, and it's really important to understand that the number on the scale going down doesn't mean you're losing fat. And what that means is we're actually losing the metabolically active parts of our body that are going to keep our blood sugar stable, to keep our energy up, to keep our metabolism going strong. And that is a key point because we need these things for our overall long-term health and longevity. So here's the one thing that's really hard to grasp until you really start to understand body composition and how it works. If you're losing a significant amount of lean mass, you might be losing weight, but you're actually ending up with a higher body fat percentage because you're not just losing fat, you're losing that lean mass that makes up the muscle, bone, organ tissue, all of these other things. So thus, weight goes down, but percentage of body fat might actually increase, especially if we're not doing regular strength training exercises, weight-bearing exercises, building up that muscle mass, and especially after those peptides are no longer in the picture, because what happens with the weight regain, we don't have that lean mass to support us, so we're actually gaining additional fat mass. So when the drugs are no longer in the picture being utilized, then we have more fat mass once that weight comes back. And for women especially, this isn't a side note, this is the main event. As we face age-related sarcopenia, which is muscle loss and bone density loss, we want to make sure we're preserving that as much as possible. So if you're on a GLP-1 or thinking about it, this is absolutely not to shame you. This is to give you the information that you need so you can support your body. We need that behavior change coaching. We need to transform our lifestyles, not just use a drug for a short-term result, because it can actually change the trajectory of our entire future from a health perspective. And this is actually the perfect moment for me to share something that I've created with you, and that is the Vitality Summer Strong 3-month summer program. It runs from June 1st to August 31st, 2026. I'll put a link in the description below, that way you have it. We can see if we're a good fit, but this is all about long-term health and sustainable weight loss, fitness, movement, nutrition, and we're not focused on protein and macros and counting and restriction. We are focused on whole foods that are going to nourish the body on a cellular level, that are going to promote health and longevity, to help you lower your blood sugar, to lower cholesterol, blood pressure, any other biomarkers that you might be working on. We're really working on supporting the body internally and doing the things on the external, like the strength training and the movement, all designed to align with your lifestyle, okay? So if you're interested in that, there's a link below. But if we're using, and this is for whether or not you're using a GLP-1, it's indifferent, but especially if you are using a GLP-1, we really want to incorporate those things into our lives so we can have success not only while using the medication, but long after the medication is no longer there to support you. Okay, the second major issue that I want to talk about with GLP-1s is the gastrointestinal tract, as well as nutrition. It's about your actual ability to nourish yourself. So as you may recall from earlier, GLP-1s work by delaying gastric emptying. Food stays in your stomach longer so you feel full longer, but that's not necessarily a good thing. And you may have heard the laundry list of side effects about gastric emptying, nausea, vomiting, constipation, all of these things, and these are not uncommon. I actually know a handful of people in my own life that are experiencing these negative side effects from GLP-1s, and they're not small problems. We know that the longer that food sits in our stomach, or intestines rather, the higher the rate of colon cancer and other intestinal cancers. Why does this happen? It's actually because potential carcinogens that we ingest, that our body's exposed to and need to be eliminated through the digestive tract, actually are sitting in the intestines for a longer period of time, exposing our bodies to them for a longer period. So while weight loss may be fantastic, we want to make sure that we're moving food through on a daily basis. And the whole IBS and GI issue, that's another conversation for another day. I struggled with that for a long time, almost 20 years. As a teenager, I was severely impacted. In my early 20s, I would have a bowel movement about every 2 weeks. I was on medication that worked at first, and then it stopped working. Super uncomfortable, but also detrimental to our long-term health. So we want to be moving food through. And I know for those of you that aren't having bowel movements daily, it might sound unfathomable. It did to me at one point as well. That doesn't mean it's impossible though, but it's super important for our health that we are continuously moving things through our system. We have very long GI tracts, so we want to be pushing that through so it's not sitting. And especially if you're already someone that's dealing with something like digestive discomfort, bloating, constipation, all of these different GI factors, a medication that can essentially slow this process down even further is going to compound things for you. When digestion is slowed so much and your appetite is suppressed, then we're really looking at the nutrition. Are we getting adequate nutrition to fuel our body to do what it needs to be able to do? And the supplement industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, tens of thousands of dollars, billions of dollars every year being spent on supplements, and many people are worried about deficiencies. This is going to compound things for us if we're not able to eat enough food that's actually going to nourish our bodies. Current reviews on nutritional support during GLP-1 therapy are indeed citing insufficient caloric intake, micronutrient deficiency, dehydration, and lean mass loss. So these are all important considerations when we're planning meals and nutrition and talking about gut health around GLP-1s. If appetite is severely suppressed and GI symptoms are significant, this ends up manifesting in chronic conditions or symptoms that women are already experiencing, like hair loss, chronic fatigue, migraine, brain fog, poor recovery, immune system issues, and a host of other symptoms that are compounded by the lack of nutrients, hydration, and fiber when our appetites are suppressed. The medication can certainly help us to eat less and stop overeating and binging, but so many of these people, and I know them and I know you know them as well, are just not hungry anymore. And there's a reason for this. It actually, I'm gonna take a pause here, it actually hijacks the dopamine circuitry, which I can go into a little more detail. It causes us to not want to eat. And this not eating is not the same as eating well. That's an important distinction. So since I brought up dopamine, let's take a sidebar and talk about it a little bit. So a lot of us have been conditioned to believe that dopamine is actually the pleasure molecule. And I actually recently learned this as well, reading Dopamine Kids. It's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. But dopamine is tied with pleasure, but they're actually two separate things. The dopamine circuitry is actually the circuitry that gives you the desire to work for something, to work for the thing that's going to give you pleasure. And we see this with screens, with gambling, with food, and dopamine is released because we want to get to that reward. And then once we have the reward, the pleasure molecule is released. With this, the GLP-1s actually kind of hijack that dopamine circuitry, so we no longer have the desire to eat. But it's not only impacting our biological desire to eat, it's impacting other things as well, which is why it's working for addiction. Now, this may be a very useful tool when combined with appropriate therapies and coaching with addiction. I'm not an addiction specialist, so I'm not even going to pretend that I am, but it's working because it's shutting down that dopamine circuitry, but it's also shutting it down for things like intimacy with your partner. There, no more drive or libido, and it's because we don't have that desire to reach, to work for the thing that's going to give us the pleasure at the end. And it's just really interesting to think about because these are basic human functions. It's how our species survives, and these drugs, these peptides, these hormones essentially shut that down at the root, which can have some crazy long-term implications, but it's really interesting to think about that this is how it actually works and what else it's affecting in our lives. Okay, so what happens when we stop taking the drug? Because it sounds great, you might be allured by them. I've even thought about GLP-1s myself. They're very tempting, but is the short-term reward worth the long-term risk? So let's talk about it. So we already talked about this a little bit, but the step 1 trial extension actually showed that 2/3 of the weight was regained within 1 year. And meta-analyses show, and what a meta-analysis is you're basically looking at multiple studies and reviewing their findings and reporting basically the average of those findings. So what they found is within 1 year, 60% of the weight had been regained, but all of the weight was regained within 18 to 24 months. So within 2 years, all of that work, that time on the medication, the weight had been regained. What did they actually find about the health benefits? So the cardiometabolic improvements, the blood sugar, cholesterol markers, what they found when the GLP-1s were no longer being taken was a backward step, right? They had a backslide and those numbers began to raise again. Now, that's not to say that some people don't continue to maintain the weight loss or have the benefits like the stable blood sugar or improved cardiac health, but that is the outlier. The majority of the cases, as seen in the studies and the meta-analyses, show that everything reverts back to square one, if not worse, once the medication is no longer being taken. And for some people, these medications are expensive and they're dealing with pretty nasty side effects. So this means if we're not using our time on the medication to build muscle, preserve bone loss, and improve gut health and support the liver and the immune system, then all of this perceived success is actually for nothing. This isn't a solution. It ends up being a cycle. And like I said before, most women want out of this vicious cycle of the ups and downs of weight loss. And here is the section that I want those that have been struggling for weight loss to really sink their teeth into, because this is what is usually never seen in the media outlets, on social media, and it is a key to our long-term health and weight loss success. If you're struggling watching what you eat, feeling like you're doing everything right, counting calories, counting macros, and following all the Instagram weight loss gurus out there, and you just feel stuck and you feel like it's just you, it's not you. So I want to show you a sneak peek into what's really important and how the Vitality Summer Strong program can actually help you with these things so you can not only achieve but sustain results. I want you to know the problem may not be your appetite. Your internal systems that actually regulate your metabolism are likely what need to be supported. So number one, the liver. And the liver is the cornerstone to our health. I will say it up, down, left, and right, but it's also very important when it comes to weight loss and physique. Okay, a lot of people think the liver just detoxifies, but it's actually a metabolic organ. It assists in digestion. It regulates blood sugar. It metabolizes fat. It helps to produce, process, and eliminate hormones. Hormones are another huge concern for women these days, and everyone is confused about hormones. The liver is a cornerstone to our hormone health and balance as well, and this gets almost zero attention. In a world where thyroid problems are running rampant, the liver actually helps convert T4 into the active T3. And if this conversion is interfered with because our liver is sluggish, then we can have a whole host of problems. So when the liver is overburdened, either from exposures, chronic inflammation, processed food, fatty foods, what happens is this conversion is out of whack. And even though your thyroid levels might look good, we actually end up with what's called cellular hypothyroidism. And this has actually happened to me. I did a hair tissue mineral analysis on myself, which was incredibly telling. And it's something that I hadn't had done with a practitioner before. And it was really interesting because it showed everything that was going on. And the cellular hypothyroidism is interesting because you can have the sluggishness and the weight loss resistance that's associated with hypothyroidism, even if your thyroid hormone levels are normal. Because it's not that the hormones aren't being produced, it's on a cellular level, they're not being utilized appropriately. And we want to get our body to a place where it begins to function properly again. And this leads me into the thyroid. So the thyroid hormones basically set our basal metabolic rate, how many calories we're burning each day, all right? And when thyroid function is impaired, we're going to experience fatigue, sluggishness, constipation, all of these things, this metabolic slowdown across our entire system. And what makes me so frustrated is that we've been taught to restrict in order to lose weight, and chronic undereating in the results is increased energy, the weight loss, less chronic inflammation, less pain, hormones are balanced, and that is the ultimate goal. The weight loss is wonderful, but the ultimate goal is improved health and longevity. Okay, so now let's talk about our stress response. And I'm not necessarily talking about just being stressed out with the kids, and those are all really valid arguments for stress and stress management and regulation. It is important for us to manage our stress. It is the one thing that is probably the most challenging for me right now. I've got 2 kids. They argue a lot. Traveling husband, running a business. It happens. We live stressful lives, and we need to be able to provide a buffer where we can so our body can feel safety. Because if we're in a state of fight or flight, we cannot also be in a state of rest, digest, restore, repair. All right. But this also goes for food. If we are not providing our body with adequate nutrition, internally, the alarm bells of stress are being signaled. This is going to do a few different things, and it might result in symptoms like obviously decreased energy, but dysregulated sleep. It promotes fat storage. It's going to have us start craving those higher calorically dense foods, like the ultra processed foods, more fatty foods, the fat and sugar together, because we're trying to get that energy. It's not that we necessarily need those foods, it's our body craving energy. So a lot of women are running around undernourished, and then they're feeling like a slave to these cravings. But if we actually just nourish our body and give it what it needs, then those cravings disappear. Okay, and I'm a testament to that. I've seen other women go through that as well. When we give our body what it needs, it's not stressing, not craving, and we can continue to move on through our day with a lot less food noise, okay? But on top of that, with stress response, it dysregulates cortisol, which is also going to have a negative effect on our weight, on our mood, on our sleep. So it's really important that we're actually nourishing our bodies. And we've been under chronic stress for years, so doing what we can to support our body so it's not stressed out is key. Okay, so let's talk about what actually works, okay? And if you're looking for a natural solution, this is where we're going to dive into it. So remember that GLP-1s actually mimic a hormone that our body actually creates. So if you're interested in boosting GLP-1, let's talk about some of the things that we can do. Number 1, increasing our fiber. 95% of Americans are not getting the recommended daily allowance for fiber. And studies have actually shown that getting 40 to 50 grams of fiber is the sweet spot for improved cardiac health, regulated blood sugar, reduced risk of multiple types of cancer, and yet most of us aren't even hitting that like 25 gram per day mark. So increasing fiber is a natural GLP-1 stimulator. Not only that, it's found in low caloric density foods, which means you can eat more volume fills up your stomach, and you can actually feel more full on less calories. But back to how the GLP-1s are working with fiber. Natural ones, anyway. So when fermentable fiber from our food reaches our colon, our gut bacteria actually consume it and produces beneficial fatty acids. These short-chain fatty acids actually directly stimulate GLP-1 release in the body naturally. So the beans, lentils, chickpeas, oats, chia seeds, berries, other fruits and vegetables, leafy greens, all of these high fiber foods, they're not just healthy foods, they're actually activating the same hormone pathway that the GLP-1 drugs are attempting to stimulate. So just going back to it, the average American is only eating about 15 grams of fiber per day, but to support GLP-1 production and activity, that 40 to 60 grams is going to be the sweet spot. So not only are you going to be able to eat more food and feel more full without consuming as many calories, you're going to be stimulating that GLP-1 production. Exercise. We all know movement is good for us, but sometimes with busy lives, and I've fallen victim to this, we don't focus on movement. We don't make it a priority. But exercise, exercise in the form of both strength training and aerobic exercise are going to stimulate and improve GLP-1 production. So making sure that we're not only moving our body for our other health reasons, whether that be mobility, cardiac health, strength, physique, but it's also going to help us with GLP-1 production. Sleep. This one is huge. And I don't know about you, but I used to get absolutely terrible sleep. Not so much anymore. I sleep like a baby, which I'm incredibly happy about. But sleep is really important because it can disrupt GLP-1 activity, but it also impacts leptin and ghrelin. And these are the hormones that actually tell us when to eat and when we're satiated. So one night of poor sleep can impact all of these, which can increase cravings and actually make us go for foods that we wouldn't normally eat if we had had a night of proper sleep. Sleep is not a luxury, even though in today's day and age it might seem or feel like it, but it's actually metabolic infrastructure. We need sleep to restore and repair our bodies, to repair our nervous system, to be metabolically healthy. And I know it can be tough, especially with active lifestyles, jobs, multiple jobs, kids, but it's really important to prioritize sleep as much as possible. So if you're already on a GLP-1 or considering a GLP-1, I'm not necessarily telling you to get off the medications or to not do it or to instill fear. This conversation is really to have empowered you to know what's really going on in your body and what the long and short-term benefits are. And if you are considering or you are on these medications, and it's really important to have that foundational support, which so many women unfortunately are not getting. They're getting the drug, but they're not getting the support either nutritionally or physically. So having that plan to maintain that solid foundation, or if you don't have that solid foundation, to build one. And that does require lifestyle modifications. There is no magic pill, and this might seem like a magic pill, but as we've seen in the scientific literature, it is all short-lived. Even the health benefits that they're seeing are all short-lived. Once the medications are stopped, they're seeing that it all disappears. So if you're going to utilize these, know that it is a tool, not a solution. And if you're looking for more support, please let me know. The link for the Vitality Summer Strong program is linked below. You can apply. What happens is you'll apply, you'll get either an audio response or a video from me letting you know if you're a good fit or not. If not, I'll give you some pointers on where to go next. But I'd love to have you there. We start June 1st, so it's coming up in just a few short days, but you have plenty of time, and it's all for less than what you would spend at a local gym seeing a personal trainer twice a week. So what we get is the nutrition support, behavior change, mindset and identity work, as well as a custom fitness plan for you to work through over the next 90 days and beyond. So let me know if you're interested. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. I look forward to chatting with you. Check out this next video. We're going to talk about protein, which I'm super excited about. It's a huge issue. So if you want to check it out, this is where to find it.